Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Monday's edition of the DCEU Daily. Today we're going to discuss the Batman's Rogue Gallery, and then we're going to read an article from Screen Rant talking about Peacemaker and how already we're deleting elements of the DCEU and kind of introducing the new DCEU. Now, Screen Rant in this article are saying this is a good thing, very controversial, and then I want to finish off this video and comparing the Batman's no-kill policy to Man of Steel's kill policy. So let's go. So the reason so many of Batman's Rogue Gallery are in this film, or should we say most of the comic book Rogues Gallery are in this film, is because this is a kind of a whodunit. So you need them there because it keeps the guessing. That's one thing in this film. When you see it, you're going to notice you're going to be asking the question, who is responsible? What's going on? Because the story isn't just about who is the Riddler, because clearly the other members of the Rogues Gallery can't be the Riddler. But there is something else within this movie that makes it a whodunit and makes it a huger investigation. Because even though the Riddler and the Batman are playing a cat and mouse game against each other, via killing these elite figures of Gotham City, the Riddler is giving clues to Bruce Wayne, aka the Batman, because there's something deeper and bigger going on in this film. And this is something that people are not really talking about. So despite the Riddler being the main villain, the villain who's not really the villain, as I discussed a few days ago when I reacted to seeing the Batman, you know, he is General Zod in a way. He is one of those villains who's not really a villain. You're going to be saying, hang on a minute, does this guy have a point? He's kind of like Zod. He's kind of like Thanos in Endgame and Infinity War. Is he right? Is he wrong? Is he doing the right things? Obviously, going around killing people isn't the right way to go about things. But this is a guy who's really trying to do what the Batman is trying to do, but he's using more kind of illegal and immoral means to do it. But the reason he's killing these elite figures is to give the Batman a clue. He knows. Now, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but it's such a small one. The Riddler, Ed Nashton, knows that the Batman is Bruce Wayne. He knows this. So Ed Nashton, the Riddler, has a lot of respect for Bruce the Batman because he kind of sees him as probably the only other intelligent person in Gotham City who's at least trying to do the right things and clean up this city. But Ed knows something that Bruce really doesn't know or chooses to ignore to know, and that this is, as I said yesterday, we got the tagline of this movie that it's all about the Waynes. Now, I'm not going to tell you whether or not this means that the Waynes were nefarious evil figures to do with the corruption of Gotham, or if there's something else going on here. So I don't want to go too deeply into that, because as badly as people keep on saying to me, tell me this, tell me that, and I'm not telling you stuff, and then I get, you haven't seen the movie. No, I don't want to spoil the movie for you. You don't have to believe me. It's fine. It's, you know, totally okay. But I'm not here to get views and likes by telling you spoilers. What I'm telling you is it's basically all about the Waynes, and Nashton knows a lot of things that Bruce Wayne doesn't, and he's trying to throw a light on all the corruption and how all the corruption started in this movie. You're going to find out that Ed Nashton isn't everything that you think he is. To know this stuff, he must have been somewhat connected in the past, right? That's all I'm going to say about that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So Ed Nashton knows a lot of things that Bruce doesn't. So Ed is very important to Bruce Wayne. He may be playing this cat and mouse game, but he does start to, or they start to see each other as allies as we get within this movie. So even though Ed Nashton, the Riddler, is kind of the villain of this movie, it's more kind of a Holmes and a Watson partnership. But that's why we're talking about a Zodiac killer scenario, because the Riddler's motivations are kind of to clean up Gotham City. And as I've already said, he's doing it in a very, very different way. So this is a very intriguing movie, and a well-written movie, in the sense it has different levels to it. It's not just about a hero capturing the evil villain. The villain knows stuff, because yes, one of the motivations from Bruce Wayne, the Batman, is to capture the Riddler. But he has a bigger obsession, Bruce Wayne, and it's to unravel the mystery that I'm not going to tell you about. There's a deeper mystery within this film and within this story, and Ed Nashton and the Riddler is really the one who's trying to bring down the veil on this mystery and illuminate Bruce Wayne, aka the Batman. So it's a very, very fascinating movie. And in the sense of this movie, I've heard Matt Reeves and a lot of people talk about the horror element of this film. And in a way, that is correct. It is kind of a Batman comic book adaptation horror movie. But there is a soft centre to this movie. And the soft centre is the dynamic, if I can say the word properly, between Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne. There is something developing between them. They become allies themselves. I've spoken about Ed Nashton, the Riddler, and the Batman, Bruce Wayne, being kind of on the opposite side, but also being allies. But they, they do become allies. And I don't want to go into this too much, because the film is shocking with its delivery of its twists. And there are twists in this movie and absolute shocks. The ending of the movie, woo, I can't talk about it, but woo. But there is a soft centre to this movie, and this is what I was like kind of hinting about when I was reviewing Michael Giacchino's Batman theme. As soon as we get past the initial hard centre, there is this kind of romantic soft music to the theme, and this is all to do with the relationship between Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne. And so I think that's an element of the film. So I don't think this is just a dark horror movie. It's got those elements to it. That's at its core. But there's also a soft centre to this movie. There's emotional moments in this movie that are going to be very important to diehard Batman stans as well. And I've said this before, and people kind of question me about this. It really is Batman it's a Superman the movie for the Batman. So the Batman's a bit more of a darker character, so you can make more of a darker movie. This is the darkest Batman movie that you're ever gonna see. Now, Batman Begins is interesting because I think prior to the Batman Begins is the best origin kind of story in live action media for Batman. I think Batman Begins is an amazing film. As I keep on saying, I prefer it to The Dark Knight because Bale gets to play Bruce Wayne, and we really seem to uncover those layers of Bruce Wayne before we see how he becomes Batman. And so this is an interesting film because the Batman isn't a Batman Begins, an original tale, but there will be things fed in to help you kind of see how that happened. And again, I don't want to give too many things away here. And so it's a very different take. It's kind of somewhat mostly a year 2 story, but it also manages to feed in how he became Batman and the motivations there that have always been there via him witnessing his parents dying. But what they've done with the Wayne's murder, in other stories, in the comics and in live action media, the Wayne's murder has always been fed in to be part of something that Bruce has been haunted by. He's haunted by their murder, but also their murder is a key element of this story and this movie. So it's very, very different. It's very unique. It's a unique take, but also I feel that only a Batman fan could make a movie like this. A talented Batman fan like Matt Reeves, who has written and directed this tale. It feels like Batman from the graphic novels. It's a very, in a lot of ways, it's an original take, but also it's a very loyal adaptation of not just one graphic novel, but a Batman in comics from day one. A lot is lifted from different graphic novels. So I think that this is what you're going to get from this movie. This is how I can impart information without giving you spoilers. So I just think you're going to come out of this movie feeling that this is Batman. This is Batman from the comics. This is who he is. This is who he's always been. And I think people are going to be not just pleased with this movie, but are going to hold it up as the best live action Batman movie. Snyderverse stands look away now. Peacemaker proves the DCEU's continuity is dead, and that's good. Now, I haven't seen Peacemaker yet. It's not available here in the UK or in the Cyprus where I normally live. So I've heard so many things about Peacemaker. Firstly, let me say the things that I'm hearing, I am loving. This is kind of got lots of kind of James Gunn comedy, but I've been really impressed with hearing about Vigilante and Chris, I forgot his surname, who's playing this character. He sounds amazing. He's created an amazing dynamic between Peacemaker and Vigilante, and it's an interesting take. We've also got Agent Waller, Amanda Waller's daughter, and she's a very interesting character. Again, I'm hearing some things that I don't want to give away. So in fact, this, rather than being just a comedy that James Gunn's done, yes, his comedy is in here, but there's some deep things, there's some deep rooting narratives in this series from what I'm hearing. And I like the fact that there's this twisted father-son relationship between Peacemaker and his father, played by the enigmatic, wonderful Robert Patrick, kind of bringing me back and reminding me of the twisted father-son relationship done between Lex and Lionel Luthor in Smallville. Now in Smallville it kind of worked because we saw that twisted relationship grow throughout 7 seasons, and in the end we saw Lex kill his own father for the secrets of Veritas. We have just got one series where they're developing this, so when I see it, I'll see if it works as well as Lex and Lionel. Anyway, Peacemaker is so tonally and canonically different from Zack Snyder's DCEU that it is a total break from that continuity, which is great for audiences. First of all, this is before Flashpoint, so it's all part of the same universe at this moment in time. But canonically, the DCEU is a bit of a mess, but Flashpoint will sort this out. Anyway, as Peacemaker continues its precocious 8-episode run on HBO Max, the more James Gunn spin-off of the Suicide Squad proves the DC Extended Universe continuity is all but dead. And that's a good thing. Peacemaker picks up months after the Suicide Squad's ending, with Christopher Smith, John Cena, recruited by a new Task Force X, dubbed Project Butterfly. By the way, I just want to say one thing about Project Butterfly. I've heard a lot about this as well. I think Butterfly isn't just something that's going on here in Peacemaker. I think this could be an arc, the arc that continues after Flashpoint. Very interesting. Outer-worldly threat. Interesting. To stop another alien invasion, but even more interesting than Peacemaker's insane adventures is the way Gunn's series weaves in multiple references to the DC universe that rewrites what audiences know about the DCEU. As I say, haven't seen the series yet, not available to me. So I can't have that strong opinion, but I can have an opinion about what John's written in this article, trying to get rid of a pop-up. Right, giving up. The DCEU began with Zack Snyder as its chief architect nearly a decade ago, starting with Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and culminating with Justice League. The DCEU was touted as the answer to Marvel Studios' incredible success. But after negative critical response and disappointing box office relative to Marvel, Warner Brothers lost faith in Snyder's vision. In addition, the director suffered a personal tragedy that forced him to step away from Justice League. Joss Whedon Joss Whedon then completed and changed Justice League into a critical and commercial bomb. However, the DCEU found great standalone success with the Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman and Aquaman. And I think these are the films, and we're talking about the first Wonder Woman by the way, that are going to remain canon in the DCEU. Somehow, canonically, after Flashpoint, I'm starting to see that Man of Steel will still be standing. Flashpoint will change elements. For example, we're going to talk about that in the final part of today's video, but I think these are the films that are going to be standing, which overall moved from Snyder's Dark Vision into their own creative direction. Snyder was finally able to complete his version of Justice League on HBO Max, but Zack Snyder's Justice League seems to be the final word on the director's DCEU. We don't know that for sure. It is looking that way at the moment. Besides Zack Snyder's Justice League, the recent DC movies like Shazam, Birds of Prey, and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn and Wonder Woman 84 have only nodded at the established continuity of the DCEU, but it's still there. Now, this is a hint that those films like Birds of Prey and Wonder Woman 84 will be deleted from canon after Flashpoint. DC's recent slate has been more director-driven, especially Joker, but the Joker has nothing to do with the DCEU, which joined Aquaman by earning over $1 billion at the box office. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad epitomises the director-driven DCEU film, as he was given free rein to make his DC team-up flick any way he saw fit, and his choice of DC's catalogue of characters at his fingertips. But between The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, Gunn has moved even further away from Snyder's DCEU canon, to the point where it's not clear whether the original DCEU movie continuity can even apply anymore. Right, let's be absolutely clear here. Until the Flash movie, everything is canon within the DC Extended Universe. Fact. But after Flash, things are going to change. Peacemaker signals a break from the DCEU continuity altogether, and here's why: it's for the best. Now, as I say, I haven't seen this show yet, so I can tell you more of my opinions on this after I've read it. The Suicide Squad was ostensibly a sequel to David Ayer's Suicide Squad, but its link to its DCEU predecessor was already tenuous even before the Suicide Squad defeated Starro, the Conqueror in the film's climax. Seeing Suicide Squad wasn't a prerequisite of the enjoying our understanding the Suicide Squad, which is more akin to a standalone soft reboot of the worst heroes ever. Peacemaker continues the story set in the Suicide Squad's universe, and it doesn't appear to happen in the DCEU of Zack Snyder's movies either. Haven't seen the series, but I don't agree here, but we'll see what he says if he gives us any clues to this series. True, there are mentions of Aquaman, right? Jason Momoa and Batman, Ben Affleck, but Gunn's jokes and perspective hint that his universe is different from the movies that came before. So it could be a thing, right? So this journalist could be right here. It could be a thing that Peacemaker is set after Flashpoint. Very interesting. For example, the neighbour of Peacemaker's father, August Smith, Robert Patrick vociferously claims that Batman doesn't kill. Interesting. Despite all the lives the Dark Knight took in Batman v Superman, Peacemaker even opens with insults about Aquaman having sex with fish, even though Aquaman established that Arthur Curry is a well-known and popular superhero. Yeah, well, he's mentioned him, so he's still a well-known popular superhero. Yeah, you're clutching at straws here. And in-dimensional imp who stands Batman is canon, as is Matter Eater lad from the Legion of Superheroes, who once teamed up with Peacemaker. Both of those obscure DC characters don't line up at all with Zack Snyder's DCEU vision, which marks Gunn breaking from the DCEU timeline. So I have to go back and say maybe I do agree with this article a little bit. It does look like that Peacemaker is set after Flashpoint without blatantly saying it's set after Flashpoint. It means everything this year is set after Flashpoint. And somehow the first Aquaman, the first Wonder Woman, Shazam, the first Shazam, and Man of Steel are all going to be dragged into after Flashpoint, but kind of differently. Like, you know, I talk about what they're going to do with Man of Steel in the final part of the show. Peacemaker Episode 4, The Chode Less Travelled, hinted that a different Joker exists in the Suicide Squad Peacemaker's canon, when August Smith's neighbour named Joker as one of Batman's enemies, since it's already doubtful that Ben Affleck's Batman is the same Batman in this canon. After all, Bruce Wayne never followed up on his threat to Amanda Waller, Viola Davis, that he'd shut down Task Force X. That's true. In Suicide Squad's mid-credit scene, this can mean that there's also another Joker in Peacemaker. Now, this is guesswork and he doesn't know this, but I think there is a brand new Joker after Flashpoint, who isn't the maniac played by Jared Leto. Leto's Joker was only hinted at but didn't appear in Birds of Prey. Again, Birds of Prey I think will be deleted from canon, and artwork depicting him didn't resemble Leto's killer clown at all. Basically, let's call this journalist a bit of a clown. I think Birds of Prey. Now, this is interesting because we know that we are, is it Jersey Smollett who's going to be playing her Black Canary in her own HBO Max series? She could literally be somebody else, not from Birds of Prey canon. Very interesting. Harley Quinn's Margot Robbie story in the Suicide Squad abandoned Mr. J completely. If the Joker mentioned in Peacemaker isn't the same one seen in Suicide Squad 2016, it's another sign that Peacemaker lives in his own DCEU that has left Zack Snyder's continuity behind, aka basically after Flashpoint. The DC movies have been getting lighter and weirder in a very good way, which James Gunn has definitely indulged and heroically perpetuated with the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. This is why Gunn's DC projects have been so well received and are so refreshing compared to most of Zack Snyder's majestic but grim DCEU movies. Listen, I'm going to defend Zack here. I love his movies, they're great, but they didn't work for the commercial audience, and that was a problem. DCU's style and continuity is too restrictive and would have demanded other filmmakers follow his example, when Snyder's unique vision and voice are difficult to replicate. Since DC Films encourages filmmakers like James Gunn to put their personal stamp on their DC movies, it's necessary and good to move away from Snyder's original universe and style. Further, the Flash movie, which will open up the multiverse and reintroduce Michael Keaton's Batman, as well as a new Supergirl Sasha Calle, could close the door on Zack Snyder's DCEU for good. The very nature of the multiverse allows for each DC project like Gunn's The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker to stand as their own versions of the DCEU. Right, listen, going forward we are not going to have each filmmaker in the DCEU having self-contained films that don't connect, because this is where this article falls down, because Screen Rant are obsessed with self-contained DCEU going forward, and they are absolutely wrong here. James Gunn has already slid in some stuff about Quahog, Kodog or whatever it's called, right? That where Black Adam originates from, right? So it's clear that what Peacemaker is doing is giving us kind of Easter eggs to the new DCEU, so it is connected to the DC Extended Universe after Flashpoint. But what they're trying to say is that each filmmaker will just have their own stamp, right? And it won't have anything to do with the other movies. That's wrong. But they will still be allowed to do their own stories, have their own looks, and have their own movies, without the interconnectedness of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that no other movie studio has been properly able to duplicate. Right. Again, they're wrong. The multiverse strategy will be interconnected and will have connected tissue, and as I've already said, will allow filmmakers, writers and directors to do their own stories, but bring in a few Easter eggs and a few cameos and crossovers and stuff like that. It's going to be the best of both worlds, so ultimately they're wrong. But he does have a point. It does look like that Peacemaker is set in a new DCEU after Flashpoint, but he's not mentioning it like that. And the Suicide Squad before it is making up its own DC rules as it goes along, and that's been a big win for audiences, perhaps even more so than his Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn's DC superheroes reflect the writer-director at his idiosyncratic best. Gunn's DC heroes like Peacemaker, Vigilante, Freddy Stormer and Judo Master Nuto Lee are strange, neurotic, violent, needy and occasionally pathetic. It's hard to imagine Snyder's godlike Justice League behaving like or even tolerating someone like Peacemaker. But just because Peacemaker's different to Snyder's take, it doesn't mean Peacemaker can't fit in to the DCEU that started with Man of Steel. But I can see where they're going with this article. But breaking from the DCEU canon allows Gunn's eccentric and interestingly weird superheroes like Peacemaker to exist and thrive. Plus, the more James Gunn's DCEU twists to reflect the heroes at its centre, like Peacemaker, the more compelling it becomes. The more compelling it becomes. This rewards the audience who are delighted by James Gunn's fascinating take on the DC universe and the superhero genre in general. So this will be a very triggering article to Snyder stands. So let me break it down for you. It looks like Peacemaker is after the Flashpoint movie. Could we say then that the Suicide Squad is also after Flashpoint? Well, it could be. It could be a different Superman that Idris Elba's Bloodsport had to shoot with kryptonite when he was paid for a hit on Superman. It could be. So it could be from Peacemaker onwards. No, let me say that again. It could be from the Suicide Squad onwards we are seeing an after Flashpoint DC Extended Universe, and it could be where we're going here. Well, it's a totally new DC Extended Universe. So either they're sticking with Man of Steel and they're hand-picking other films. I think it's clear to see now that James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Aquaman, Shazam, the first Wonder Woman and Man of Steel are all going to be canon, and the rest of them will be deleted. So it's going to be very, very interesting how they do this in the Flashpoint movie. I was never triggered by Superman breaking Zod's neck in Man of Steel, but I still think narratively it's the dumbest decision ever. You get rid of Zod, a great villain that you can't bring back again. But let's compare this to the Batman's no-kill policy. The Batman is a film that will talk about the rage of Bruce Wayne and the Batman. He will go close to killing, but he won't kill. Now, in the film, at the end, in the third act, Superman was given no choice but to kill Zod, something he clearly didn't want to do within the narrative. You then go from, I think he's kind of hot, Superman or Clark smiling at Lois, welcome to the planet. It's stupid. It's dumb. You can't have a compelling moment like Superman breaking a villain's neck, then try and go a bit lighter. It simply doesn't work. Now, there were so many different ways where you still could have had a battle between Zod and Superman without killing him. Literally, he could have discovered blue kryptonite. Blue kryptonite could have been a thing in the movie. He could have slipped blue kryptonite on Zod, making him powerless, and then they could have put him in some kind of prison, imprisoned him even in Clark's ship, or one of the ships they were using within the film, the Kryptonian ships. There were so many different ways of dealing with Zod in that movie without killing him, but I think Goya was trying to be controversial, and ultimately the reason Man of Steel didn't make more money was because the fans were triggered by the neck-breaking moment. Seeing Superman break a villain's neck in a Superman movie was triggering for hardcore Superman fans, and I can understand that. And this is the very reason that they've, I mean, Matt Reeves is a huge Batman stan, and I'm sure he agrees with the fact that Batman shouldn't kill. Now, again, I'm not that against Batman killing, and I'm not against Batman not killing. But I think for the fandom and for people coming in, they don't want Batman and Superman killing. It's as simple as that. So I just think it was a dumb decision, and I'm happy that Batman and Superman going forward in the DCEU won't be killers. It's the right decision. You always make the right decision that your consumers demand, or you won't make any money. It's as simple as that. So everything in DC live action is changing. We are going to rewrite the DC Extended Universe canonically, and I think it's pretty obvious that Peacemaker and a lot of all the films coming out this year are set after Flashpoint already. And I think somehow at the end of the Flash movie, we're going to see what exists and what no longer doesn't exist. So it's a very exciting year. But it's also an exciting year for DC as a whole, because this is a new look, a new era, and we've got Matt Reeves, the Batman, set on another Earth. This gives Matt so much freedom. This gives Matt the clay that he can form in any way he wants. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. Until then, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.